unfortunately, I guess it's that time of the show where we need to talk about the ugliness of the last few days. Did you read all 67 pages?
No, sir.
It's woo, dark. Not what I expected. And there's so many questions coming out of it. I don't really even know how to talk about this, Jeff, because I feel like I'm having trouble just reconciling it in my head. I feel like I've kind of been in a head funk, if I'm honest with you, Jeff, since Thursday when I read it. I was actually on my way to Tampa when I got the news by text. A friend of ours sent me a screen grab, and then I went and found the actual court document and downloaded it to my phone and read it on the way to Tampa. And by the time I landed, I was like, I don't know how to reconcile my fandom with all of this. Because on the one hand, like, I think most of us really, really like professional wrestling, or we wouldn't be recording this podcast or listening to this podcast. And he being Vince McMahon, pronouns pal, was such a big part of that. It's, I mean, you kind of give him credit for a lot of it. And then you read all of that stuff in black and white, and you're like, what am I doing with my life? What in the world? Like, it's got all over me. And I know that he's responded and said that it's a bunch of lies and he's going to fight it and defend his reputation. But he's done. I just don't see a scenario where Vince McMahon can not only never return to WWE or for that matter, professional wrestling, or I mean, he can't be a public person anymore, I don't think. Would you agree with that? I mean, who wants to do business with him? He is the definition of toxic right now, no?
Oh, I mean that is an appropriate word for January the 29th, 2024. Over the last couple of years, Conrad, I don't even know really where to start, and it's uncomfortable
Yes.
in so many ways, knowing the relationship that my father had with his father.
Right.
So it really does go back, and my grandmother thought so highly of Vince's father, and kicking and screaming. She understood the magnitude of the early WrestleManias, if you will, and me going to work for them, and her little questions. You making good money? And I'd say, Teeny, you have no idea. Because it was just it was a completely different foreign world. And so when I go on my set point there, and like I said, over the last couple of years, Conrad, I look at life completely different. I have really gotten into Stoicism philosophy and going back thousands of years and on just uh, life. And one thing's for sure is change and the yin and the yang, and there's no such thing as all good and no such thing as good all evil. And just Conrad, but the screenshots that I read, it it was it was toxic. It was unbelievable from hard to wrap my head around all of it,
Yes.
knowing and look, my opinion is subjective, and however much credit you want to give him or the family or the WWF and the team, and going back, Vince acquiring it from a gorilla and the other two, and it just the history of it all. Everybody looks at this completely different, and there's a Twitter voice and an Instagram voice, and they are different, and a Facebook voice, and the mainstream media voice, and old school, new school. But no matter where you sit on it, it is disturbing, and for all intents purposes, it's the end of an era, and it is a new day in the professional wrestling business. And look, it's the magnitude and how it's gone down. And look, you can't subtract any one component of. I mean, we talked a little bit about on this Georgia Michelle on the board, off the board, and Nick Khan in, and the change in leadership, and off and on, off and on. And everyone knew at some point that Vince was gonna, and the joke was he's gonna, die in that seat. Just because he even said that, just the evolution of the WWE and where it goes, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And we've talked about the very cool things of Rock sitting on the board, and Nick Khan, and Netflix, and all this, but the tragedy of how the man Vince McMahon sits today. It's unbelievable, Conrad.
It is like
It's so again. And look, I would be remiss without saying this. He who without sin cast the first stone. And that's what my faith tells me.
right.
But my goodness, Connie,
Yeah.
it is. I like you said at the beginning. I don't have words for it. I really don't.
I think before we get too far into the discussion, we need to say that it took a lot of bravery on the victim's part to come out with this. And I know there's a bunch of Looney Tunes online who are going to victim blame and laugh and defend Vince. Man, if you read all 67 pages, I think you'd disagree. Like, I mean, I am a wrestling fan because of Vince McMahon's creations. He was our Walt Disney, and now that's all done, man. Like, it feels like he's got to sort of be erased from WWE history. I mean, I understand if people, call for him to quote unquote be Benoit, but you think back to like that WrestleMania 20 Open. You see Vince's grandfather and Vince's dad and Vince, and now Shane, and now there's Shane's son who now plays college football. And to think that the McMahon lineage now, by and large, is going to be erased from this company. Like, I just felt like that was going to be such a part of this company forever and ever. Amen. I mean, we even saw Shane's son do an interview a few months ago about who was going to run WWE. Would it be him or one of Hunter's kids? Like, and I guess some of that could still happen, but boy, it is just way different. And to know the way Vince felt about his dad and his father and the pride and the McMahon family crest being on the championship belts on down the line. I know this sounds crazy, but on some level, like, I know Vince wanted to be a billionaire. And when that graphic came out, his profile photo or portrait with TKO, and he had the little mustache, people joked he looked like a movie villain. But now his reputation, dude, his legacy. I mean, what's the difference between being worth 500 million and a billion? Your quality of life doesn't change. You can only drive so nice of a car and fly so nice of a jet and live in so nice of a house and eating so nice of a steak. You sort of max out. But legacy is what a lot of these guys are, still working for in their advanced stages. And now that's irreparable, I'm afraid.
Well, I have been taught that if you are still breathing,
There you go.
nothing is irreparable.
I love talking to you, the delusional optimist.
Well, I mean, I have just this morning at 7:30, Conrad, I heard a story that would make the hair on your neck stand straight up, and you would say, I said this. Only by the grace of God is this gentleman sitting in his chair today. There isn't any logical explanation. There's no way I can stretch it and make it a sci-fi, I mean, Hollywood, nothing other than, okay, God stepped into this gentleman's life and look at him today. So I say that to say it is a very dark day in
Yeah.
in Vince's life. But it ain't over till it's over.